There was a bottle here. It left behind a trace of the substance that pervaded the laboratory. Several drops of the substance were spilled. Someone carried this bottle around. Several drops of the substance were spilled. Someone carried this bottle around.
Gold dust? Good heavens. What's it doing here?
The gold is almost immune to chemical attacks, so it may be a valuable auxiliary for various experiments.
But why would anyone perform such experiments in a botanical garden?
The bottle is no longer here, but it is possible to detect a faint scent. We need a good nose. A botany book. This student's book belongs to Albert. Chemicals, a sufficient quantity for some serious experiments.
A phonograph used for voice recording. Remarkable.
Yes, this is quite a modern laboratory.
And it seems clear from these multiple experiments that plants do respond to their environment and have a form of consciousness. Margaret White, February 1895. Report number 245.
Study report.
Martin Hamish's perception of plants. The notion of communication in the plant world has long been considered marginal, yet I remain convinced that some plants do indeed transmit chemical signals in the event of attack.
A study report by Martin Hamish. This is a table for experiments. It resembles my own.
Only this one is kept in good order, Holmes.
It appears as though the protective equipment is missing from here. Such masks are generally worn when dealing with toxic chemicals. Gloves, waterproof aprons, everything one might need for self-protection.
Do they grow dangerous plants here?
Locked.
Holmes, Albert Dunn didn't give us the key to this door.
It does not matter. We will open it. Open. The employee's cloakroom. Miss White's locker. Apparently, Miss White is a capable student. A draft of the letter that Miss White sent to her parents. These jewels must be worth a small fortune. A vanity purse. It is of high quality. Martin Hamish's locker. A review on rare and exotic plants. Martin Hamish has written several pieces. Martin Hamish studied chemistry. Interesting. Father and I, Kew Gardens. Albert's locker. Specialist articles on shipyards and ship construction. Albert Dunn has a great passion for shipbuilding and the sea. A rejection letter from the British Royal Naval College. Young Albert, standing with a woman in front of London University. Come on, Toby. We have some work for you to do. Let us go to Kew Gardens. Let us take Toby to the laboratory. He will pick up the scent of this mysterious substance. Search, Toby. Search. Congratulations, Toby. Now let us see what you have found. This is the bottle that was used in the laboratory. There is still some liquid remaining in the bottle, with gold flakes, a tiny caterpillar. Not surprising to see one in a garden, but at the bottom of a bottle. Let us determine just what we have found here. Let us pour liquid from the bottle into a test tube to perform an analysis. A colorless, water-based liquid. Quite a strong floral aroma.
Holmes? What are you doing?
It has a bitter taste.
What if it's poisonous?
Did you ever see poison stored in enormous jars like that? Anyway, there is a doctor nearby.
So what do you think it is?
It is some kind of organic compound. Let us vaporize the liquid and see what happens. Small colorless crystals. Colorless, tiny crystals that are soluble in water, with a floral smell and a bitter taste. Watson, could you pass me that small bottle, please?
Of course. Here you are. Holmes, do you know what it is?
Wagner's reagent. There was a label on the bottle that you passed to me.
No, Holmes, I meant the bottle that we found.
Let me add the reagent and see if there is any sediment, and then I shall tell you. I need to take a pipette and make several drops of the reagent. Red sediment, just as I suspected. This liquid is of organic origin. It contains some alkaloid. Most likely it is unstable, and that is why there is a quantity of gold dust to prevent contamination. This mixture is probably a fertilizer. Someone was carrying out unusual experiments in the garden's laboratory. My analysis table. It is useful for my work. According to the deadly plants information, in order to perform our experiment, we will need fertilizer and food. Caterpillars should do nicely. This substance is an alkaloid, the same as in the bottle we found in the bushes at Kew Gardens. Perfect, Watson. We can begin our experiment. I imagine that one of these plants would be capable of releasing a toxic vapor. I need to find out exactly how it could be done. I shall begin now. Watson, if you are at all optimistic to have dinner this evening, then I'd recommend that you put on the gas mask. It appears to have fallen inactive after being disturbed. No reaction. My word! It shot a spike at me after I stabbed it with a pin. I imagined that its reaction would be ferocious if I increased the strength of my attack. This plant becomes inactive after being drenched with alkaloid. It appears to open after being soaked with alkaloid. This plant becomes inactive after being drenched with alkaloid. It closed again. I believe I saw a small cloud of gas. I wonder what secrets this plant is hiding. Perhaps if we agitate it to a greater extent whilst it is opened, it will reveal a little more. I find the behavior of predators utterly fascinating. How interesting. What a strong and effective defensive mechanism. I am interested in what might occur if the prickly plant should shoot at it. It appears to open after being soaked with alkaloid. Toxic gas with spores. Extraordinary. The plants would be capable of killing only if they were directly next to the victim and stimulated at precisely the right moment.
Let us take our caterpillars to the Colonial Collection Room. We may see things more clearly there.
It is too early, Watson. Our suspects will be there. Let us investigate Kew Gardens one more time and ask some questions. What is your opinion of Albert as a student of botany?
He's useless. I often tell him so, and I can only give him cleaning tasks. Botany is not his life's work, and his father well knew it. He was furious about it.
He was?
Oh yes, he forced his son to work here, and he never missed an opportunity to criticize him publicly.
Are you able to elaborate on that?
Well, for example, with our last exhibition here, Mr. Dunn had Albert make a presentation speech. But then, while the lad was speaking, Mr. Dunn interrupted him, asking him difficult questions, making him look like a failure. It was with the intention of making a fool of him, Mr. Holmes.
That must have been terribly humiliating.
Yes, he was crushed, and he had to leave. Everybody was making fun of poor Albert. That is, except for Miss Margaret White,
who was such a nice lady and who always takes pity on Albert.
You mentioned a Miss White. Would you tell us more about her?
She is a student who works here part-time. She is quite charming indeed. She possesses a great talent for botany. You should take a look at some of her experiments that she carried out in the laboratory. Ah, if only she were not so naive.
Why naive?
The way she used to flutter around Mr. Montague Dunn. And why, he couldn't help but be flattered by all her attention. How could an intelligent woman such as Miss White not see through his game? I can only scratch my head and wonder.
Mr. Hamish, was someone from your family connected with Kew Gardens?
Family? No. I'm the only one with a passion for botany.
I do not think so. This photograph of you and your father at Kew Gardens suggests the opposite.
But you have no right to.
Do tell us more about your father.
He was, indeed, the greatest botanist of his time in the British Empire. He worked together with Montague Dunn until the end of his life. He brought me in at the age of 12.
Did he get on well with Mr. Dunn?
No, I couldn't say that. They expanded Kew Gardens together, that was all. And it was all my father's work, for Dunn always lived the high life.
So Mr. Dunn was not helping your father?
Oh, yes, he provided the financial support. And as far as he was concerned, that fulfilled his role. But the worst of it was, he declared himself as the master of Kew Gardens. Fame meant nothing to my father, so it was easy for Mr. Dunn to take all the credit.
Can you tell me if you saw Mr. Montague Dunn on the day of his death?
Yes, of course. I met him, and we went to see Albert, his son, at around 9:30. He appeared quite calm.
What were you doing on the morning of the accident?
After paying multiple visits to Albert, I had a little talk with Miss White. Then I returned to my desk to complete some paperwork. Suddenly I observed that Mr. Dunn was not feeling well, so I ran immediately to fetch Albert. I clearly remember that it was around 10:30, for I was late that morning.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. We shall continue our investigation. Your father's death does seem highly suspicious. What were your movements here on that day?
Suspicious? Well, I was working in the seed house, taking care of Lysip something, or Lear Pontus, or... No, wait. Ah, these Latin names. And I spent so many hours trying to memorize them.
Did you see your father that day?
Yes. He came here with Mr. Hamish for his weekly visit. There was nothing unusual about that.
And then?
Nothing. They stepped out to the backyard. It was perhaps 20 minutes before 10 o'clock. Then about 10 minutes later, I saw my father heading for the dry tropics room while Mr. Hamish returned here.
And Mr. Hamish and Miss White, what were they both doing that morning?
Mr. Hamish visited me a couple of times. I also saw him returning from talking with Miss White, and that was at 10 minutes past 10. But then he ran back here to me to tell me that my father was feeling unwell. We hurried across to the water lily room, and I found my father lying dead on the floor. Oh, my God.
I perceive that you are passionate about the Royal Navy.
Passionate? No, not really. I like ships, that is all.
Are you quite sure? You do not seem to be so interested in plants.
It's difficult, that's all. My future is here. It has never been about anything else.
And yet I know that the Royal Naval College rejected your application.
Ah, you truly are as clever as they say. Yes, that's correct. And in fact, my father was strongly against the idea. He did his best to ruin my plans, although I almost did succeed. But my dreams were shattered, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, young man. We shall see you again soon. nursery. These young plants must be delicate if they are kept in the nursery. We can see the interior of the Colonial Collection Room from this window. This poster is for an exhibition that Martin Hamish was directing, but it had nothing to do with Kew Gardens. This certificate belongs to Martin Hamish. He won a horticultural competition. A glasses case. It is empty. A thesis written by Martin Hamish. This area serves as Martin Hamish's office. A master's degree diploma. It belongs to Martin Hamish. An award presented to Martin Hamish for Best Grower of the Year. It is a bust of Montague Dunn. I am curious if the marble that we found will fit. Here it is. The marble fragment that we found in the Colonial Collection Room is what they have in common. The seeds of plant species are stored here.
Look, Holmes, this charming lady must be Miss White. She's entering the seed house.